right, so getting back into part 2 here. I know that for you guys, it probably seems like the blink of an eye if you're watching this after part 1, but for me, it's been pretty close to year and a half since I've filmed this, and I've been sitting on it, and my AD's been getting the better of me, feeling bad about not getting it out there, because it's a cool project. I've been using it for the last year and a half. I like it. So I want to make sure I got it out there, because I did tease it before my ADD got the better of me and stopped making content. So what we're doing here, getting the holder there on the side for the fire steel, kind of figure out where we're going to put that, scoring it with the awl there. And then we will go ahead and show it to the camera so you can see what's going on. And then scratch into the sheath there. That's why we were laying out where it was. See, this is just as much new to me as it is to you guys, because it's been so long since I did it. But now I got that there. We're going to go ahead and get the leather stitching lines set down for where we're going to be doing that. And then we're going to prick all the holes in that piece while it is on the bench top. And the reason for that is because it's just easier to do one piece at a time like that. And then you'll see here in a second, I'm going to take that piece then over, fold the sheath in half, and then transfer over those marks where I want them. And that's why I have those layout lines there, so that I can reorient it on there the way that I want it. And then those holes will line up, because otherwise it's kind of difficult to punch through a piece while it's folded without going through the other side. So that's what we're doing there, transferring those marks over. And then after we get them moved over, we'll go ahead and punch them individually. Just line the holes back up with where we punched them at. And hit those edges that we had knocked off with the edge trimmer there. Make sure that those are nice and stained. Do the same thing all over the entire thing. It's a lot easier to do this when it is all one single layer and all flat on the bench. Once you start having curved pieces, sometimes, you know, if you're doing any kind of leather work yourself, you'll kind of get a sense of what I'm saying here. Sometimes when you're doing that, it kind of looks like, almost like, cheekers, like when you're maybe shaving wood, you know, it has like different planes you can see that you shaved it off at. And I'll tell you, I was just doing a leather project downstairs not that long ago, and I wondered how I ended up, or what I was using for glue last time. It's school glue is what I'm using here, and you guys can use school glue too. I don't know if you know that. What I'm using here is my my awl and a couple of needles to orient that as it's setting up there. Going to go ahead and put the old bench vise. Oh, just kidding. It's a crappy candle from the basement in there. So the next thing that we have coming up here is the part of the dangler part of the sheath that is going to actually hook onto your belt loop. So we're just going to go ahead and get that the edges of that treated with some burnishing lotion, I guess you could call it. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what the terminology is for it. All right, we don't do things super fancy around here. We just get it done and make it look good. All right, so it's that stuff. I'll put a link down in the description maybe if I'm thinking about it. But it's like a Japanese burnishing treatment. If it's on Amazon, you can find it if you look it up. Throw a little bit of that around the edges there. Use the burnishing tool. Again, it's just easier to do all this stuff before it's all sewn up. And so that's what I like to do. Another thing is make sure that when you're burnishing afterwards, you use like the cone portion of the burnishing tool to kind of flatten out, because sometimes it can kind of like mushroom the edge of the burnishing or the leather with the burnishing tool. So if you just use that to kind of flatten it back out and then maybe hit it with some light pressure again with the burnishing tool, I find that works nicely. So again, just stitching, and I'm doing like this triangle pattern stitching thing instead of like a box end for it. It's just kind of like cohesive throughout the entire thing. I kept the same angles. I believe I mentioned that in the previous thing. I did the same trick again, I believe, with the transferring over the marks because I didn't want to go through the other side, obviously. So I did one side, transferred the marks, and then did the other side on a flat plane. Now just hand stitching. Obviously, this is something that you could probably do in a stitching pony, but you know what? Things like this I find to be honestly easier to just go through one side and then either turn around and go back the other way, or just continue on depending on how many holes you have. If it's a odd or an even number of holes, it'll dictate what you have to do. But just doing it by hand with one stitching needle going through instead of doing a 2-needle method I find it to be an absolutely fantastic method for this kind of an application. So just go through, do all that, get it snipped up and burned, and that's the little piece there that you can get on Amazon that I'm going to use to attach the dangler to the actual sheath. It's brushed brass. It's hard to say. Brushed brass. So, yep. So just doing that, going to go ahead now and attach the one side of the holder that's going to hold the ferro rod. And so you can't do the other side because, I mean, I guess like you could if you like wet form the leather or something like that, but it would be an issue probably to try to get it to glue and stick on a flat plane. So what I'm going to do is do the one side, make sure it's all nice and set, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to fold it and glue it and fold it and stick the needles through to make sure that it, you know what I'm saying here. You see what I'm doing here now? Because you can actually see what I'm doing here. And it's a good thing that I'm telling you about this because I actually just skipped ahead a little bit to take a look ahead, see if what I was explaining to you just then was actually in the footage to come. And turns out it's actually not. Spoiler, I am not a videographer. Videographer. We'll go with that. Or a commentator for that matter, or a YouTuber. Well, I guess I am technically that. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. While these straps for the Scout carry are being made up, I will explain in detail without screwing it up and in hoping to rely on video evidence of what's happening. You do not want to do both sides of the stitching around a curve at the same time, and the reason for that is because if you're leaving a loop specifically, it's going to pucker the piece that's on the outside because it's got a greater diameter. And so do one side, glue it, let the glue set, stitch it, and then after that, fold the piece how you want it to be in its final configuration, and then glue it while it's in its final configuration. And so in order for me to do that, what I need to do is essentially get everything else done first. And it's an order of operations thing here. You'll see that I'm doing the burnishing along the edges of all these things. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get those straps there. You'll see in a second here how they kind of go on there. But I want to get all of these things done. I want to get the welt that goes along the outside edge so that the knife doesn't actually cut the stitching. There's a piece of leather that you put between the knife's edge on a sheath. It's called a welt, and that is there to, again, like I said, protect, essentially give the knife something to rub up against other than the stitching. It's a piece of leather that it's like a third piece, like a leather sandwich. And so you get these set, get the welt essentially in place how you want it, and then fold the piece over, and then I'll be gluing it again on the other side of the ferro rod holder that is not currently sewed up. That will be done off camera. I don't know what to tell you guys. I didn't record it, and I guess I just probably figured that you were an intelligent... No, I knew that you guys were an intelligent enough audience that you'd say, you know what, he didn't leave it unsewn, because we can see in the final product that it's not unsewn. Anyway, got our button snaps here. I really like these brushed brass. I nailed it that time. Brushed brass. Button snaps, and I guess that may be kind of my thing. I do like brass. So go ahead and get those set. Also figure out exactly how I want the where I want the snap to go around it. I'll be honest with you, whenever you're making stuff out of leather, always lean towards the side of tightness, because leather will stretch over time, especially if you can get it a little bit wet if you need to. You can really manipulate it, but you can't really make it shrink. I guess you could if you got it wet, but that would kind of, it's not the best method. Don't leave extra room necessarily unless you really need it, because it's a lot easier to stretch leather than it is to get it to shrink back properly. And so the knife sheath that I made here, honestly, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, it's a little bit loose in its retention. The straps that allow you to carry it, Scout carry, are a little bit loose, and it's not ideal. I wish that I had done it a little bit differently. Here I'm trying to figure out where to put my maker's mark on the sheath. Did not leave a great place to billboard my product, and that's okay, because it's just for me, and honestly, if it was for somebody else, it would also be okay. I came up with a better method after making this for using my maker's mark, and what I did for that was I just got a wood, chunk of wood, and in my drill press, I put like an old crappy bit that I had, and I essentially just drilled a hole into this like 2x2x6 piece of wood. And then whenever I want to press something now, I just put a piece of wood on my bench press, and I use the the lever, the spindle, the press part of the bench press to press my maker's mark into my leather work. And it's a real janky but effective method. So here I am using some Neat's Foot oil, Neat's Foot compound. It's like a waterproofing leather treatment that you can use. You can also get leather conditioners. Beeswax is great. I use beeswax quite a bit, honestly. I rub it into the leather. I might even do that on this one. Sometimes I do multiple methods of water treatment and waterproofing. But you rub the beeswax on, and then you hit it with a torch, and it will melt it, and then I kind of rub it in a little bit. And just showing you off here what we got going, or what it's going to look like anyway. So here we got the welt, that piece that I'm looking to put in there. Tracing it out, piece of paper, always a solid option to get a perfect outline, give you the idea of what you're working with, and cut it out with with a razor blade. And then you got a template, real easy. Like, I'm using a piece of crappy leather here, but a nice thick, like really sturdy piece, probably, I don't know, jeekers, probably 8-9 ounce leather, I would guess, like very thick stuff. And perfect for using for welt where it's gonna be hidden on both sides. And it can be, it not only can it be, it should overhang your final work product, because you can always, once you get it in there and get it secured, you can always cut it off. You should trim it off, because if you're trying to get it too exact, too perfect, you're going to end up shorting yourself on material. I swear, every time I try to like custom cut it so that it fits perfectly, it's never perfect. It's always, little gaps here and there, and that's not what you want. So me scratching it up there just gives it a better ability to bond and adhere when you scratch it, because one side of veg tan leather is always going to be a smooth side and a rough side. The rough side obviously is going to grab the glue really nicely. The smooth side, not so much. It's smooth. And so I trimmed it off, knocking down those edges, sanding it also, especially with something like this where it's 2-3 pieces of leather coming together here. Sanding it is a really nice touch to get a really smooth surface for your pre-burnish. And I call it a pre-burnish, I guess, just because the purpose of burnishing is to give a nice rounded, smoothed edge that's finished looking. And by sanding it, you're obviously doing that. Make sure that when you're doing your, dropping in your stitch lines there, that you are re-dyeing those. That should probably go without saying. If you're doing this leather work yourself, you will notice the stark contrast, the stark difference, and it's not going to look good in the finished product if you don't do that. So just dropping in our prick lines here, and then once we have all of those put in, we're just going to go ahead through with our straight edge and stretch out all of those holes there. God, the editor's gonna do a number on that one. The editor's me, by the way. So just gonna go ahead and get all of those holes pre-stretched out. Just going through 3 layers of thick leather, it's going to be difficult without having like something to help you push the needles through. There are tools in place to help you push needles through things. Thimbles, for instance, the bench top, but it's always just easier if you go ahead and just run that all through every one first, just to get everything in line. It's going to save you a little bit of time in the end. It's a really quick step and process. So for this, we are just doing the 2 needle process, and with all these straps on here, gotta say, wish that I used the stitching pony. And I don't know if I've told you guys this. My stitching pony is just my bench vise that I have with some soft jaws in there. I don't actually have a traditional stitching pony, and that's because I am a hobby YouTuber that does this stuff for fun and for a little bit of a side business. I do not do this for a living. So a set of bench top vise with some cardboard, some like a t-shirt, whatever you want to put in there, and then just not clamp it down super crazy, will work. And here we can see essentially the finished product. Doing a test fit, got the ends of the thread burned off. And so now we are going to do the final button for the knife retention snap, essentially, is I guess what you could call it. Just kind of figuring out where I want to put that. I know that the button that's attached to the actual sheath, I want to be centered essentially on the handle. So I'm going to do that one first, and then I will do the strap button, the top snap, secondarily. And again, like I said, I should have gone tighter with that. I should have assumed that it would stretch out over time, but I did not, and as a result, it is a little bit, doesn't hold the knife as good as I want. It will not come out if I shake it, but it is, great. Listen, it's a Dangler sheath. It shouldn't be hanging upside down. If it's hanging upside down, then I can't even say that something's gone terribly wrong, because I've been like, what's gone terribly wrong? Like, I'm in outer space. If this thing's hanging upside down, then gravity doesn't exist to me. So yeah, knife retention, I would prefer that it was a little bit tighter, but it's not the end of the world. The other thing is, I wish that I had done the ferro rod holder a little bit tighter. I did not, and I regret nothing. I have actually lost the ferro rod because it is not as tight, so I guess I do regret some things. I'm guessing that it is somewhere, probably in the basket of crap that I keep on my desk, but it is not currently in there. It's not currently in there because it is not as tight as I would prefer. Always leave your leather fixtures a little bit tighter than you would prefer. And so that concludes this video, guys. It has taken an exorbitant amount of time. I am a little embarrassed about how long it took me to get this out, but you know what? Better late than never is a life motto that you can live by if you choose to, and that's the one I'm going to choose to live by. If you've made it this far, then you're an absolute hero. I appreciate you so much. Maybe click like and subscribe. Drop a comment down below if you want. But if not, that's totally cool too. Appreciate you sticking around, watching my video. Let me share a little bit of my hobby with you. If you're interested, I do have some things on my Etsy shop. Same name as my YouTube channel, TP Leatherworks. Appreciate you so much. Thank you guys. Have a great night.